He was a beacon. He was a human expression of the principle of that current in a human form, and that expression is unconditional love. It evokes in people a calling to the miracle that lives within them, a recognition through that person of themselves. And for that, he was a great threat to those times, for those who power and position, even their sense of responsibility was to preserve the status quo. Because even that, be it for a religion or a good cause, is based on ego, based on separateness, that's based on survival, based on preserving that egoic identity and that egoic organization. And for good reason. We have to have an ego to organize to be in the world. Institutions arise from creating places where people could be nurtured and supported and survive and find a way to live life without being destroyed by it. So it's not that they were the sinners or they were evil. It was the time. It was the density of the content at that time wasn't ready. Or unwittingly, it was ready. Because his death, his sacrifice, his torture became recognized from those who were nearest to him. Those 12 that were nearest to him. And as a child, I wanted nothing else but to be one of his disciples. I remember crying frequently, actually, because I was immersed in that as a child. My family, both members of the family were Catholic. We've had priest over. We went to church every Sunday. We did. The whole family was very engaged. So it was. I didn't know anything different than that. But so it seemed. I was born into grace. So my first teacher, my first pillar, was Jesus. And then it went from there. First thing that happened was I became a teenager. Oh no, first thing that happened was Kennedy was assassinated. And it blew my world apart. Why? Because some part of me was connected to whatever it is that John F. Kennedy represented for my family. And for those who were in school with me. So that was like an anti-pillar. And it blew apart the fragility of my own individual incubation up until that age, which I was, 14 maybe, 13, 14. So then I went into darkness. Now, what I did have different than others is I had art. And art was my solace. I didn't need drugs. I didn't need those things. Art was my refuge. But until someone gave me LSD. And when LSD happened, matter of fact, I shared this with someone, my vision changed. I saw the world from a paradigm, which now, of course, I'm seeing it from physically, as a reflection of that time I told. It's like the first time I took LSD. It's like the world came alive. And everything came alive in that process through my seeing it. And then it was that whole, there wasn't one person, but there was these people that were talking and speaking of this alternative spirituality, this alternative other than this life, where Kennedys aren't being assassinated. There was this possibility for being, like there was a future other than the one that I was in, which there was no future. And without knowing it, identified with that which was the destruction, the no future, and became that which is not interested in anything called love, only interested in its pain, only interested in its anger, only interested in its discovery that was also there, and its curiosity, and its adventuresome, and it was fearless and stupid in that burst. And that, of course, because we live in a dimension of consequences, space, time, outcomes, cause and effect. I collapsed. And then I found my second pillar, which was Meher Baba. And I've shared this before many times. I read his book called God Speaks. And for me, God had spoken. And all that I had lost came back to me in a huge wave. And all I wanted to do was be his disciple. And I had no tools or capacity or functionality to actually be with him. But that's all I wanted at the core of me. Now, my surface self was just trying to get out of addiction and get out of being overtaken by the negativities, my rage and my stupidities and my compulsions, and build a life. But simultaneously, there was this call to discipleship, a call to be one who knew the beacon, one who could be in relationship with such a beacon.